This car was the cleanest and nicest old Ferrari I've ever seen. My mom has seen me have so many cars. So over 100 in the last decade, constantly coming in, coming out. So she's kind of become very numb to the idea that like there's an exotic somewhere. So one day she'll be like, "Oh, what'd you do today?" I'm like, "Oh, I just bought like another 300K car." So like, again, we need another one. I'm like, "Well, yeah, like you never have enough." And she's always like, "Okay." And she goes back to doing what she does. And sometimes she'll open the garage and she's like, "Oh, what is that?" I'm like, "It's this kind of car." Like she actually recently really loved the Ford GT, but the Ferrari 550 held a place because I guess when you're older, you associate with certain cars that were in your era or it's cars that were higher, more important cars of their time, right? With the 550, it was actually interesting because the 550 ended up not only becoming a car I never expected to own, but it was also a car that actually made me and became probably one of my greatest flips. And the way I got the car was actually a really interesting story because I wasn't expecting to buy the car. I think that's the thing with some of the best buys I've ever had is I wasn't looking for the car. I was actually helping a student of Exotic Car Hacks. He had just sold his NSX and he needed a dealer to help transition the deal for him. So I was helping him do the deal on simply selling this NSX to another just random person that he had found as a customer. However, last minute, this guy's doing all the paperwork, he's great. Last minute, he goes, "So why are we using a dealership?" So I explained to him how this guy's buying a new car. So he's got this tax credit thing going on. And he says to me, he goes, "Well, what's that?" And I go, "Well, it's this thing when you trade a car, you get to not pay taxes on the offset if you live in Florida." And he goes, "That's crazy." He's like, "I never heard of that." And I was like, "Yeah." So I'm trying to pitch him. I'm like, "This is what we teach at Exotic Car Hacks. You should join us, whatever." And the guy's like, "Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about." But he's like, "Yeah, I want this credit thing." And I'm like, "Well, you can't have the credit if you're not trading something in. Like, I can just not pay you taxes." And he goes, "Okay, well, I'm going to trade something." And I'm like, "Okay, now what the hell?" Like, I was like, this wasn't supposed to be a trading deal. I'm like, I'm not making any money on this. I'm just helping a student facilitate his NSX sale. So I was like, "What are you trading? Like, maybe I get a number from CarMax and you can take it," and it's gone. So he goes, "I got an old Ferrari." And I'm like, "Oh God, here we go. He's going to pitch me some 355 that like needs 50 grand worth of work." And he goes, "Well, I got this 550. It's a 6-speed. It's red on 10." And I'm like, "Okay." So in my head, I'm like, "Okay, so now he's going to want some astronomical number." He goes, "I've been offered 130 before from dealers." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm not paying 130. Like, I can't buy that car for 130. I go, "I'll pay 100 on the phone." He goes, "Oh, you got to be out of your mind. It's not worth 100. And I'm like, "Well, you want to trade it. So if you think about the credit you're getting, it's like you're getting 110. So he's like, no." He's like, "It's still too low." I was like, "All right, listen, let's send it to an inspection and have it looked at. If it doesn't need a lot of stuff, I'll come up to like maybe 110. He's like, "No, no, no, it's not going to work." I'm like, "All right, so what's the number?" He goes, 115. And I go, "Well," I said, "that's too much." I was like, I want to stay around 110. I go, "If it's perfect, I give you 112. How's that? And plus your credits, like you got 120. He goes, "Okay, that sounds good. I'll take that." I'm like, "All right, so let's take it to inspection." So I'm expecting this car to go through inspection and be a disaster. But this car was the cleanest and nicest old Ferrari I've ever seen. First off, it had carbon seats, which were like rarely ever available. It drove perfect, had no lights, no issues. The glass was all marked with the Ferrari logo, so nothing was replaced. But this guy had gone, and he had receipts from day one of all of the trim on the car, all the plastic, the sticky buttons, everything, like the trim around the windows. Everything was replaced with brand new Ferrari, like done at Ferrari Fort Lauderdale before he bought the car. So he got all of these receipts for all this, like 20 plus grand of like window trimming and everything else. So the car looked brand new. And the only thing that was bad on it was the paint. Like it just looked like it just wasn't taken care of. So I go, "Listen, like it needs tires, it's still gonna be like overly annoying of an old car for me to take. It's not my specialty. I really want to be at 110. So can you come down and car's okay mechanically, just needed tires because they're old." And he says, "Listen, man," he's like, 112 and you can take it. Otherwise, I'm not even buying this NSX. So then I call some of my buddies in the car business and I go, "Listen, what are you paying for this?" So I start getting numbers in the 130s. So I go, "Okay, well, I can't be greedy now because I'm going to make 20 grand on this anyways." So I go, "It's worth it." But then I've always had this rule: if a dealer is willing to pay me 130, that means they're going to list it for like 150, 160, 170 and make money. So I go, well, if they're going to make that money, I already know how to sell a car. Why would I wait till they make the money on my car? So I go, all right, well, I'm going to try to sell it myself. So I said, at least I have a backup offer where I can make some money. So it's good. So I gave this guy's money, gave him his NSX. We did the trade. It was fantastic. Took the car. And then I decided to paint correct the car, put a little bit of effort making it perfect. And it looks so beautiful. And everybody that saw it kept saying like, holy crap, this is like gorgeous. The carbon seats. Even my mechanic, who's a big Ferrari guy, was like, this is really clean, man. Really hard to come. It's like, this car is really amazing. Engine mounts, everything's perfect. Needs nothing. So I'm like, all right, so we're good. I'm going to keep it forever. It'll be worth a fortune down the road. And then I saw on eBay, I saw one car with 3,000 miles listed for like 169. And I saw like a lot of people watching it, and it was a hot car. Like a lot of people were like looking at it and clicking it. And I looked at the condition on that car. It didn't have carbon seats. The dashboard was shrinking from the leather was shrinking. So I started realizing that like, man, I have something special. This car is mint. And I'm like, someone would see this, they'd lose their shit over this. So I go, okay, so let me try to list it at the same price this other guy's got this 3,000 mile car because it's a nicer car. And maybe while I have more miles, I have a better car, so someone's going to pay it up, you know? So I listed it for 169. And I got really lucky because what ended up happening is some doctor found it on eBay and called me. So everybody lowballed me. Everybody was like, oh, I'll buy it for like 130, 120. And for a week, like I kept answering, no, go away, go away. And then suddenly this doctor hits me up with a really reasonable, like, hey, do you have a phone number? Let's have a conversation about the car. I said, sure. So I started talking to him about the car, and he goes, so he gives himself away because he goes, I'm too tall and I don't fit in the ones without the seats. And I really wanted one with the carbon seats. So I go, okay, well, great. So that's fantastic. So I was like, so we can do a deal. So this like 169 is the asking, you know, and you can just buy it and we're good to go. And he goes, well, you know, I saw another one in Newport, same exact condition, super nice, same miles too, and they're asking 150. And I'm like, oh, okay, does it have the seats? He's like, nope, no seats. I'm like, you just said you don't fit in the ones without seats. So why are we comparing a car you can't even buy? And he goes, no, I understand, but I'm trying to say like that's their full asking, and I haven't even started negotiating it. I go, I tell you what, like I'm asking 169, you're saying there's a car 150. Why don't we meet in the middle at like 160 and we just call it a day? And then you can, if you want to do an inspection or whatever else, you can do that. And I promise you, because I had just inspected this car, I was like, I promise you this car's clean, doesn't need anything. So he does the inspection and he goes, oh, it needs tires. And I'm like, yeah, I knew that because I hadn't changed the tires because they were old. And he's like, yeah. So he's like, I'm pretty much okay as long as you comp the tires. I said, listen, like just let's get the tires for like just $1,000 and we'll just remove 1,000. You can buy your own tires whenever you want. And then he started like arguing about the shipping and he goes, well, I got another $1,500 in shipping. I said, I'll tell you what, I make it really easy because I don't have time. And I was like, I'm super busy. You give me 157, you handle everything else. And then that's it. And we just part ways and you're happy, you have your car and I have a car, I have my money and I'm done with the car. And he goes, okay, sounds good. That's fantastic. And I'm sitting there like, yes, like home run. So, you know, that became the best hack or the best flip I've ever had on a really cool car because, you know, one of the things I always tell people, it's not about buying the cheapest cars on the market. It's about buying the right specs, the right cars. And more importantly, the way I hack cars is finding cars that don't have comparables on the market. And I think that's one of the key things in my way of selecting exotic cars is that I try to pick the cars that someone cannot say, well, I've seen one just like it, or I'm fighting you and someone else on the price of this car. And I think that's what's always allowed me to do really well with my cars, like just like this Ferrari 550, is even though it's not a car that's maybe in the direct in the repertoire of cars that I would typically buy because it's an older car, it's a car that would require more attention, it's not as fast or cool as some of the newer stuff I drive. It's also fit in the same model that there weren't other cars with carbon seats. There weren't other cars in the condition. And when I look at Ferrari, I think red and tan are just very notorious colors. So it checked all the boxes of the regular exotic car hacks. And so it made sense to kind of buy, especially when, like I always say, if you're offered cars, you can buy them at the right prices. If you have to buy them, you're always paying what it's worth for you to have it at that moment.
We'd like to thank Transparent by Glassparency for supporting the VinWiki YouTube channel this month. Transparent just released the first system to allow customers to buy wheel and tire, dent and ding, or key fob replacement warranties direct from their phone or computer. The days of having to overpay at a dealership and having no other options are over. So you can visit transparentwarranty.com, enter your vehicle and your zip code, no personal information, no hassle, and see what coverage is available for you. So be sure to check them out today.